New polls from the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CBS, and CNN show former President Trump leading President Biden between 2 and 6 points as voters express concern over Biden's cognitive state. Voters are also aware of his record, which includes inflation up better than 19%, energy skyrocketing nearly 36%, spending mainly due to $7 trillion in new spending and borrowing. His open border policy has meant more than 10 million migrants illegally entering America.
Yeah, it's getting bad for Biden and Democrats. And, this is the thing. And I don't really get it, right? There are some Democrat voters that are cheering for Biden to step down. And I'm like, you do understand that you're just going to replace him with another Democrat. So nothing's going to change. You're going to get the same exact policies. It's just going to be a different face. It's not going to make any difference. Democrat policies are Democrat policies. They got us to where we are now. So simply because you replace Biden doesn't mean anything improves. It's just a different face. Maybe somebody says things in a little bit of a different way, right? I don't understand that. And also, I don't understand why, some Republicans are cheering for Biden to be outed. It's just like, have you seen the numbers? Like, we have this guy beat. We've got him cornered. It's the fourth quarter with 2 minutes left on the clock, and you're calling the other team and like, yo, maybe you guys should replace your quarterback. Maybe you guys should, I don't know, call up Tom Brady or something. Like that one doesn't make sense to me either. Why Republicans are like cheering this on. Like, yeah, replace Biden. Like, no, why? We have him beat. You should be cheering Biden on, if anything. I'm cheering Biden on. I want him to continue running. I want him and Kamala to be on the ticket come November. Let's go round 2. All right? Let's go round 2 because I believe we have them beat. So why would I want them replaced? That just doesn't make sense. But, maybe I'm some type of idiot. But I do want to show you guys these polls, man, because it's pretty crazy. All right? Let's dive in.
I just want to point out where the polls are now, where they were at this point back in 2020, and Joe Biden's worst position in the polls back in 2020. Right now, Donald Trump leads in an aggregate of national polls by about 3 percentage points. If you go back 4 years ago at this point, Joe Biden was ahead by 9 points. This right now don't look anything like what we saw 4 years ago at this point. I then decided to take it a step further. What was Biden's worst 2020 polling position? He was ahead by 4 points, which basically matched what he ended up beating Donald Trump by in the national popular vote. So this 3-point advantage for Donald Trump is Donald Trump's best position versus Joe Biden, whether you include the polls this year or you include the polls last cycle. The idea that the polls underestimated Joe Biden last time around, simply put, does not hold any water, Mr. Berman.
Not in the general election, certainly. What about in terms of being underestimated in the Trump era in general?
Yeah. So I decided to expand upon our search. Who outperformed their July national polls? This is major elections during the Trump era. We can start in the midterms, right? Take a look here. This is the 2022 midterm. Wow. This is a generic congressional ballot. In fact, Republicans were underestimated by a point. They outperformed their July polls and the actual result by a percentage point. You go back to 2018, Democrats did outperform their polls, but just by a point. Basically, the polls were right on at this particular point in the midterm elections. We talk about the presidential race. Last time around, Donald Trump actually did better in the results than his July polls by 5 points. You go back to 2016, you see something very similar. That is, the July polls actually underestimated Donald Trump. He outperformed his July polls. So the idea in the Trump era that the polls have underestimated Democrats, whether it be in a Joe Biden matchup, whether it be a matchup against Hillary Clinton, whether it be in the midterms, at least in the national polling, that right now shows Donald Trump in his strongest position, simply put, is not true. If anything, the polls have underestimated Republicans during the Trump era, especially in the presidential races in 2016 and in 2020.
Bingo. And that's one of the things that I've said before. In 2016, everybody was talking, Hillary's going to win, Hillary's going to win. And Trump won. In 2020, I believe some of the polls had Joe Biden up by 10. He barely won. So the thing about Trump is his turnout is always bigger than the actual polls show. Because there's a lot of people still to this day in this country who, realize that there's a lot of animosity towards Trump supporters. Even though, and this is the crazy part, when mainstream media always tries to accuse Republicans of being the mean and nasty people, but yet Trump supporters are the ones that have to, bite our tongues sometimes in certain situations just to keep the peace, right? Just so people aren't fired from their jobs, right? So the turnout is always bigger than the polls show. And you saw it there. Both times Trump was in the presidential race, he outperformed his polls. And I do believe it will happen again. And so when you have polls that have Trump up already, and he typically outperforms his polls, man, hey, listen, and I'm going to keep saying this. The only thing that worries me at this point is people getting comfortable. Because all these polls look really, really good. I'm worried about people sitting at home and saying, oh, well, we got this in the bag. That's the only thing that scares me. We have to make sure that people show up no matter what the polls say. And I think Donald Trump even said that at a rally recently. We have to show up. Don't worry about what the polls say so much. I mean, it's good. It's great to look at. It's some good eye candy and whatnot. It's always fun to see us, beating the Democrats back. But we have to show up. Simple and plain.
On that front, I mean, how unusual is it for a Republican to be ahead by this much right now?
Yeah. So let's go all the way back. Who led in early July polls? Well, right now, Donald Trump is ahead. Go back in 2020, a Democrat, Biden. 2016, Hillary Clinton, a Democrat. 2008, 2012, a Democrat. Even in 2004, where George W. Bush ended up winning, John Kerry was actually ahead in the polls at this point. You have to go all the way back to 2000, to George W. Bush being ahead in the early July polls. You have to go all the way back to the end of the 20th century, beginning of the 21st century, to find a Republican ahead at this point. 24 years. At this particular point, the idea that a Democrat is ahead, there are voters in the electorate who are dealing with a poll position they have never seen before, and that is a Republican leading in the national popular vote, at least according to the polls.
A very unusual situation. One thing I just will point out, Biden may be talking about the primaries in 2020, where he did not do well in Iowa and New Hampshire, and then he ended up with the nomination. But that's a different animal. That is a vastly different animal than any kind of a general election setting.
Correct. In fact, if you were to look back at the 2020 national Democratic primary polls, they mostly had Biden ahead, except for that little small portion, right, when he lost Iowa and then lost to New Hampshire and then lost to Nevada. But overall, those primary polls had him ahead, and then he won. And certainly when it came to the general election, the polls always had Joe Biden. There wasn't a single poll that met CNN standards for publication that ever had Donald Trump ahead in 2020. And now you have a slew of them. And the average, of course, definitely has Donald Trump ahead.
History ain't what he says it is on this front. Harriet, and thank you very much.
Not a single poll in 2020. Not a single one. Incredible. Incredible. But even if you want to talk about down the ballot as well, which is also something that we also have to pay attention to. It's not just the president. The House and the Senate also matter. It doesn't do us any good if Trump is sitting in the White House, but we have Democrats controlling the Senate, and we possibly have Democrats controlling the House. That doesn't do us any good. So we have to make sure that the Senate races are won. And we also have to make sure that the House races are won. Okay, and here's some polling on that as well. Check it out.
Biden. But the fact of the matter is, you look at the national polling, the generic congressional ballot choice for U.S. House. Look at this. CNN poll, +2 Republican. Wall Street Journal poll, +3 Republican. Monmouth University poll, +3 Republican. Yeah, Joe Biden may be in slightly worse shape in these particular polls, but the fact is, when Biden's down 4, 5, 6 points in these polls, you can only run so far ahead of Joe Biden. At this particular point, at least in the race for the House, it does seem like Republicans are ahead because Donald Trump is so far ahead.
What's the Senate landscape?
Yeah, what's the Senate landscape? I mean, take a look here. GOP needs just a gain of 1 for control if Trump wins. And their path is extremely clear because their best chance for a pickup opportunity is in West Virginia. That's a very likely GOP win with Joe Manchin retiring. And the best Dem pickup chance, perhaps to reverse that so the GOP doesn't gain a net gain of at least 1, is Texas. But that's still a likely GOP win. So the fact is, if Donald Trump wins this election, the race for the Senate, for all intents and purposes in my mind, is over.
One of the things I have heard from Democrats running for Congress is, okay, if President Biden's not doing well, what we'll say is it makes it all that much more important to elect a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. Maybe they can gain support that way. But does it work like that, split tickets anymore?
It really doesn't. Let's go back since 2000. Same party won presidency and Congress. Yes, 5 times. No was just 1 time in 2012, the House that year. But the House popular vote that year actually went Democratic, even though Republicans maintained control of the House. So the fact is, 5 out of 6 times, that's not good math. And let's just take a look at the Senate here. Senate and presidential races in 2016 and 2020. States that voted the same way in both, 68. States that voted for a different party, just 1. That was Maine back in 2020. The fact is, straight ticket voting is the way of the land these days. The idea that Democrats down ballot could somehow outrun Joe Biden to such a great extent to win control in the House or maintain control in the Senate, that seems to be an unlikely proposition.
That is a pretty stark number.
Yeah,
right?
those are pretty clear numbers, John.
Arian, thank you very much.
So, obviously the forecast is good for us right now. It's obviously great, to be completely honest. But it's not won yet. As the old saying goes, which I don't know where it came from, probably some old time thing, but the fat lady ain't singing yet, okay? So until it is won, until it is official, ain't no reason to celebrate. I remember there was a actually I'm gonna pull it up. Because I want to show you guys this video clip, because it's the mindset that I kind of have in this moment, right? Even though everything's looking good, everything's looking great, we're on the right trajectory, okay? We've got people like Scott Pressler doing some fantastic work. All right. I'm sure a lot of you are doing some work as well out in your local communities. And if you aren't, I highly encourage you to do so. If you want somebody to connect to get you started, Scott Pressler is the guy. You can find him on X. All right. But this is the mindset that I have. And it was Kobe Bryant, the NBA player who passed away. Oh, goodness gracious. It's probably been like 3 or 4 years now in the helicopter crash. Rest in peace. But this is the mindset that I have. Check out this video clip.
Still waiting for a big smile out of you. You're up 2-0. What's the story? Are you not happy, or you're only half happy, or?
Still to be happy about.
You're up 2-0.
Job's not finished. Job finished? No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So the reporter's like, bro, you're up. I mean, like, you're up in the finals right now, 2-0. Why aren't you, like, smiling and giggity? Kobe's like, job's not done yet. What's there to be happy about it? We haven't won. We can still lose. There's still more games to play. Why would I celebrate now? We haven't even won. And, that's the kind of thought process that I kind of have at this moment, right? It's good to look at this stuff. It's fantastic to see. I love it. It's amazing. But job's not finished. Job's not done. It's not time to pop the bottle of champagne or whatever. It's not time to crack open the beer or, to celebrate in whatever fashion you like to celebrate. Not yet. It's time to go harder than ever. It's time to push the pedal to the metal. Because obviously we see that the mainstream media has been lying. They've been saying that most people completely disagree with us and that we're extremists. Well, clearly we see that we aren't the extremists, and a lot of people actually do agree with us. So let's speak out more. Let's disprove this whole Project 2025 whole crap even more, right? Job's not finished. Let's get it done in November. Y'all stay safe out there. Peace and love. I'm out.